This is a short video about this chainsaw you see in the foreground. It was bought online, and there's a few things that people buying chainsaws online I think ought to know. Here is the posting. This is my high-tech skills. I printed out the posting, limit of my high-tech skills, and it shows some of the information about the chainsaw. It's 75cc, 20-inch bar, 6,000 kilowatts, or 6,000 watts, 6 kilowatts, a bit optimistic. And this is the box it came in. Let's see if we can get that in focus. Yeah, just chainsaw picture, about the right size. And you'll notice that it's a variety of chainsaws seem to be packed in the similar box. And there's a tick mark on the 75cc one. First discrepancy we see is there's a range of power outputs, and the highest one is 4.8 kilowatts or 4,800 watts. Well, I'm not too fussed about that because I knew it would be kind of wildly optimistic to get 6 kilowatts out of a 75cc chainsaw, but let's go on to a few other important things. The most important one is the chain brake. There's another printout, came from the posting, and you can see, this is actually the startup instructions. You can see it clearly indicates that you need to release the chain brake, which kind of implies that the chain brake exists. Let's have a look. So to get at the chain brake, this, if you want to see what the saw looks like, my printouts are all black and white. Nice colors, looks good. And actually, these saws, I think people online have told me they're copies of a Zenoa, and the common sizes are 45, 52, and 58 cc's. So I thought, and I've got one in that range, and I thought one in 75 cc's. So one has up the engine size would be a very good thing to have. Back to the chain brake. So the primary safety feature on a chainsaw is a simple little brake that's actuated by this sort of finger guard handle here that can stop the chain almost instantly in case of a mishap. And normally you push that handle forward, or it gets pushed forward by inertia or by your fingers if the tip is flipping up at you, and it would stop. Now there's a bit of movement there, but it's kind of on a detent, so it would go snap if it's working correctly. There's nothing happening. All right, let's figure out why. So to do that, we take off the clutch cover here, and the chain brake lives in there. That handle is mounted to it. It's a simple operation with the tools provided in the chainsaw box. It's a screwdriver wrench. I think the pros call it a screw wrench. This as a point of interest, this saw does come disassembled, so I'm going to back off the chain tension a bit. I do about 1.5 turns. Just let me put it back together easily. So it comes disassembled, and I've done just a little bit of assembly. And now we are taking it apart again to have a look at that chain brake. Bear with me. Let's park that there. And take the chain and bar and put it aside. And we can see what's going on there. There ought to be, and there isn't, a mechanism in here which is totally missing, that actuates and have a band in there, a brake band, that will grab this outer rim of the clutch that drives the chain. All of that is missing. Instead, what we have is a plate that's just holding the handle in place, and the holes are a bit sloppy, so it gives that little bit of movement. To show what ought to be there, here's the clutch cover from a chainsaw that functions properly, and you can see all the mechanism is in there behind that. This piece of metal I call the plate is shaped differently to allow the mechanism to move, and the brake band is there, the one that grabs that outer rim of the clutch. So the way that works is, if you're having a problem with a chainsaw, or you just want to move from place to place and make sure that you can't accidentally get the chain spinning, you push that handle forward, it snaps, the finger guard handle, and when you want to resume cutting, you just pull it back and it releases the chain brake. And you can clearly see that all of that is missing in our black, possibly 75cc chainsaw. It's certainly not 6 kilowatts or 6,000 watts. On to the next thing, which is, what size is the motor of this chainsaw? So they print on the box that it's 75 cc's, but let's check. Let's see what happens when we check. So to do that, there are two things that we check. The first being the bore and the stroke. To get at the stroke, we take the air filter cover off, which just comes off by hand. The air filter comes off, put those aside, and now we need to remove the spark plug, so carefully pull off the spark plug lead. That contact is a little iffy in there, but it works. And use the provided screwdriver wrench to loosen the spark plug, and we can remove it by hand. And put it aside. Now the tool will need to get a reasonable estimate of the stroke, which is the amount, the distance that the crankshaft moves the piston up and down, is just a coffee stir stick, which we place as vertically as possible down the spark plug hole. And if you look closely, as I'm turning the clutch, kind of press down as I turn the clutch in the clockwise direction, the internal part of the clutch, the coffee stir stick moves up and down, and it's easy to tell when you're doing this, when it's at the very bottom, which is right there, and when it's at the top. So I've parked it at the bottom, and I'm going to just take this tool, which has a sharp corner, and right against the housing, with the tool in contact with the housing, piston at the bottom, make a nice scratch on the coffee stir stick, which hopefully will be visible to the camera. And I think it will. And now that was piston at the bottom. Do the same thing when you move the piston till the stir stick indicates it's at the very top. Yeah, right there. It moved backwards too far. Moving backwards will interfere with the pull start, which is still installed on the chainsaw, so that you can see the mark I made with the piston at the bottom. Now I'm doing exactly the same thing. The wrenches, or the edge of the screwdriver wrench, is in the same position. Let's see, make sure we're at the top. Better be fair. Yeah, oh, we went down a little bit. That's it now. And we'll make a scratch on our coffee stir stick. And let's double check those. I can see the scratch. I wonder if it shows up. Yeah, that is at the top. And we're going down again. And that scratch is at the bottom. All right, now I'll bring this closer to the camera and hopefully just get a bit of background for the camera to focus. Hopefully the viewers will be able to see those distinct scratches. Yeah. Is that showing up? The question is, perhaps a pencil would have been better for the video. Well, the next tool we're using is just a simple ruler graduated in millimeters. And we're going to line up one scratch with the 0. And the next tool I need is my reading glasses. One scratch with the 0. And see where the other one falls. And it's looking, actually it's looking, I'm going to give it 32. It actually looks closer to 31. And oops, let's see if that can show up in the video. Yeah, I think the scratches are showing up. But to be generous, I'll give it 32. That's what I've done for the calculation I'm going to show you in a minute. The next measurement we need to do, we'll put that little stick we measured the bore with aside, is the stroke. We have measured the stroke. The next measurement we need to do is the bore. To do that, we just need an adjustable wrench or anything like an 8mm wrench. We'll take these two nuts off and hold the muffler on. And then we will use the Allen wrench or hex wrench that was provided with the chainsaw to take these two socket head cap screws out. When the muffler is off, we will have exposed the piston through the exhaust port, and we'll be able to measure the diameter of the piston. That plate just reinforces the muffler for when you tighten up the screws, I would guess. We'll put that aside. New coffee stir stick. Now, as you can see right into the exhaust port, and I will turn. Hopefully that's showing up. And you can see the piston going up and down. And we'll just put it there, and on the way back up, we'll stop it before it closes the exhaust port. Near the top of the exhaust port, we are inserting our coffee stir stick until it bumps into the back of the cylinder bore where the other side of the piston is. So holding that in gently, we're going to just rotate the engine a little bit, and we can feel the piston hitting that coffee stir stick, and both the piston and the edge of the cylinder and the exhaust port should leave a mark we can see. Let's see how that worked out. Yeah, we have a mark from the piston and a dent from the edge of the cylinder there. And let's measure that. Now we're going to the very end of the stir stick and lining it up. And I think I'll be generous again I'm getting 46 millimeters. Let's see how that shows up on the phone. Hope that's in focus there. Really? All right. We have our two measurements. That was the bore. The previous measurement was the stroke. Now we do a simple calculation with the bore and the stroke that gives the volume displaced by the piston when the engine's working, and that's how the size of the engine is computed. And you can see that we're not getting 75 cc's or anywhere near it. If we had my workshop available and a nice precise digital caliper or dial caliper to do these measurements, we'd probably find that this is a 52 cc chainsaw. We've been a bit generous with our little millimeter ruler. If you want to be certain about the range of engine sizes that are possible if we weren't being careful with our ruler, if you run this calculation again, taking a millimeter off of the bore and off of the stroke, that might be, oh, we're being inaccurate and we've made a mistake on the small side. You come up with 49 cc's. If you do it again, overestimating, say, or assuming you've made a mistake on the big side, using 47 and 33 millimeters, you come up with, I think it was 57 cc's. So we can say with a very high degree of certainty that this chainsaw is about 53 cc displacement, and it's not going to be any more than 57, and it's not going to be any less than 49. We can be very certain of that. So that pretty much speaks for itself. The chain brake is probably the most important issue. A lot of people might be buying this who aren't very familiar with chainsaws, and that is a primary safety feature, so people using the chainsaw will be at a very much increased risk of serious chainsaw injury, especially if they're a novice or a first-time chainsaw user. I would recommend that no one use this saw until you somehow get yourself a working chain brake. And the parts are available, and I'm probably stuck with this, so that's probably what I'll do, is just buy the parts online, assemble them into the chain brake cover and make it work. But it's not what was advertised. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.